All the slides shown here belongs to their respective owner. I or the channel does not claim any rights over them. All the slides are for teaching purpose only. Hello everyone, I am Shahan Laik. I am a third year MBBS student and today I will discuss about a very important topic for NEET PG and DNB examination. And that is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is also known as low Gehrig disease. So who is low Gehrig? This is the picture of Lou Gehrig, who was an American baseball player, and this disease is named after him because he was a very famous baseball player and he suffered from this disease, and because of this disease he has to retire from his profession. So that is why this disease is named after him, and this disease is known as Lou Gehrig disease. So the first question that comes to your mind is, what is ALS? ALS is actually progressive neurodegenerative disease. So it is a disease which goes step by step and it progresses. It is not that it is just remaining in a stable condition. It is progressing disease and neurodegenerative disease. So it degenerates the neurons. This is a disease in which the motor neurons are generally affected. The motor neurons degenerate after some time and the person eventually dies. So basically this picture is showing what happens to the function. There is a loss of function in the upper motor neuron, I told you. Basically these are the neurons which evolved from the 5 layers, the layer 5 of motor cortex, and they descend via pyramidal track to synapse with the motor neuron. So you can understand what is upper motor neuron. Upper motor neuron are actually those neurons which evolved from the motor cortex, and they descend with the help of the pyramidal track and the synapse with the motor neuron. So that is the upper motor neurons that are affected. Another is the lower motor neuron that is also affected. Basically, lower motor neuron are they originate from the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord, and the lower motor neurons are also originate from the brain stem, and they generally innervate the bulbar muscles. So both the upper motor neurons and the lower motor neurons are affected. So the upper motor neurons function is lost and the lower motor neurons function is also lost. Basically this will create a variety of function loss inside the body. You can understand from this video. Now basically what is motor neuron? A motor neuron is actually a type of nerve that is originated or that can be found in the spinal cord, brain and the brain stem, and motor neuron provides a connection between the voluntary muscles of the body and the nervous system. So you know what is voluntary muscles? The muscles of the skeleton. The skeletal muscles are the voluntary muscles because we can move as our own, but in case of the heart we cannot move it with the help of our own will, and that is why the heart muscle is involuntary muscle, you know it. So the voluntary muscle, the skeletal muscles are attached with are connected with the nervous system with the help of a certain kind of neuron, and that is known as motor neuron. So that is why this disease basically attacks or degenerates the motor neurons. It may be upper motor neuron and it may be lower motor neuron. Upper and lower both can both these are motor neurons and they originate in different parts, like it may originate from spinal cord, it may originate from brain stem, all these places. Basically the upper motor neuron, they originate from specific layers of the cortex and they move down by the pyramidal track and at last they synapse with the motor neuron. And in case of the lower motor neuron, you can understand they actually originate from the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord. So you can understand that is the lower motor neurons. Basically, they have different functions, upper motor neurons and the lower motor neurons, but both are motor neurons, and you have to understand that this disease attacks the motor neurons. This disease actually degenerates the motor neurons. So that is why it is known as the ALS, that is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Basically, what is the cause of this ALS? We don't know the proper cause. It may be due to some genetics, or it may be due to environmental. Sometimes it runs in families. Sometimes no family members are affected. Still, there is a patient. So we cannot say it perfectly, like for what cause this disease has occurred. But basically, we can understand the pathophysiology of ALS. In ALS, the motor neurons get affected. So you can understand that there is no messages, no connection that is there between the muscle, the skeletal muscles, and the nervous system. So these muscles are not getting any kind of messages. They are not getting any kind of response from the nervous system. So these muscles will eventually become weaker, and this muscle sometimes become thinner, and atrophy can occur, muscle cramp can occur. So all these conditions are occurring because the connections with the muscle and the nerves, between the muscle and the nerves, is actually lost. So because of the degeneration of the motor neurons. So as the condition reaches the latter stage, so more motor neurons are damaged and more voluntary muscles fails. So the person now cannot move. The person become paralyzed, and there is muscle weakness. So all these things will be there. Now about the pathophysiology, basically this is a sporadic disease. That means it may not runs in the families. In case of the family, it is only 5 to 10%, and in sporadic cases it is about 90 to 95%. Basically, the researchers are still doing the research why actually the motor neuron degenerates in case of the ALS. But the researchers have suggested two main causes for this. One is excitotoxicity, another is gene mutation. Excitotoxicity can occur due to glutamate. So glutamate, if there is excess glutamate or if there is unbalance of glutamate, that can cause excessive excitability of the neurons, and that can be toxic for a neuron. So that is why it is known as excitotoxic. So excitotoxicity can result from glutamate. Another cause can be the gene, that is the gene mutation, like SOD1. So SOD actually means the superoxide dismutase. So SO means superoxide and D means dismutase. So superoxide dismutase 1 gene is basically mutated in case of the familial ALS. And SOD1 is SOD1, which is a cellular defense against the excitotoxicity, which detoxifies the free radical. What is the function of the SOD1? Basically, SOD1 actually acts as a defense, acts in the defense, just like our army defends our country. Our army actually protects our country from being attacked. In the same way, our cell is protected by this gene SOD1, because there are free radicals that may attack our cell and can destroy the cell. So SOD1 is actually helps in the cellular defense, and they are against the excitotoxicity. So they also prevent the excitotoxicity, so that excessive excitation do not occurs, and the neuron do not die because of that. So you can understand SOD1 has a very good function. It has a function on the cellular defense system of our cell, and it protects the cell from excitotoxicity. It protects the cell from the free radical that may attack the cell and destroy the cell. So basically they have a very good function, the protective function, just like our army. But if there is a mutation in this SOD1 gene, that is superoxide dismutase gene, then what happens? Then we get ALS. Then we get the disease where we can get muscle dystrophy, where we can get different kinds of muscle problem like muscle weakness, paralysis. All this can occur. Now basically zinc SOD interaction must be understood. This is a very good topic. So normally active SOD enzyme binds with both copper and the zinc. So SOD actually the SOD1 enzyme that binds with copper and zinc. So free radicals are removed and the nerve cells are safe. So basically the SOD is functioning to make the nerve cells safe. But what happens when it is familial ALS? In case of familial ALS, SOD1 linked familial ALS, the mutated version of SOD1 is there. So in case of familial ALS, we get the mutated version of the SOD1. There, the enzyme can only bind to copper, but the enzyme cannot bind with zinc. So basically, as the enzyme cannot bind with the zinc, so free radicals are produced, and free radical will eventually damage the nerve cells. So nerve cells get lost. Another case is sporadic ALS that I was telling. In case of the sporadic ALS also, what happens? The SOD1 is normal. So SOD1 is normal. It can bind with zinc effectively. But in sporadic ALS, there is deficiency of zinc. Now the question is, why there is deficiency of zinc? Because zinc has now bound with other cells or other cell proteins. So zinc is not available. So you can understand this will result in free radical production and the nerve cell will be damaged. So you can understand how zinc and SOD1 has an interaction. Basically, I told you about glutamate and the excitotoxicity. So how actually glutamate results in excessive excitation and how actually glutamate leads to excitotoxicity, and that can eventually lead to ALS. How? So this slide I will explain. Glutamate actually can lead to calcium influx. So if glutamate can lead to calcium influx, if calcium enters a nerve system, then that will eventually damage, that will eventually destroy, that will eventually degeneration of the nerves will occur, degeneration of the neurons will occur, because calcium influx in neuron. Always remember this concept. Calcium influx results in degeneration of neuron. So glutamate helps in calcium influx, and that led to degeneration of the neurons. That means that leads to death of the neurons, and this will lead to denervation or degeneration of the motor neurons. So there is no action potential. So no action potential is there because the nerve has already been degenerated. The motor neurons is already be degenerated. So there is no action potential that is transmitted through these motor neurons. because these motor neurons has already been destroyed. So as there is no action potential traveling through these motor neurons, so what happens? The muscle do not get or receive any kind of information, any kind of messages, because these nerves actually carry the information from the brain, from the spinal cord. So the muscle will become flashy, the muscle will become spastic, the muscle will become different kind of weakness will develop in the person. So all these things will be developing. So always remember, the degeneration of the nerves will now cause the clinical manifestation after these things has happened. So as the motor neurons has been destroyed, so degeneration of nerves has already taken place. So this will be manifested as muscle paralysis, muscle spasticity, and muscle weakness. Slowly the person cannot move properly. Slowly the person cannot walk properly. So all these symptoms will be developing in the person one after another. So what is the clinical manifestation? Basically, the early stage we get this, that is dysphagia. You know dysphagia? This means painful and phagia means swallowing. So painful swallowing. That is the bulbar manifestation. Another is dysarthria. That means painful joints. So the first symptoms or the early symptoms of ALS is dysphagia and dysarthria. That means swallowing problem, and the patient also develops pain in the joints, dysarthria. Another is emotional lability. Emotional lability, that is also occurring because of the bulbar onset. Another is in the limb, you can find out spasticity, spastic limbs. Fasciculations has occurred in the limbs. Cramps has occurred. Muscle weakness and atrophy of the muscles. So all these will be found in the person in early stage of ALS. I told you about that ALS is a progressive disease, so it will progress. So in progression stage, you will find out dyspnea, that the person will be find out difficulty, painful in breathing, painful breathing, dyspnea. And also the person now cannot walk properly, cannot use his arms, cannot use his hand, cannot use his leg properly. And the person also now will lose the ability to speak words, and the person also has difficulty in swallowing food items. So all these denotes the progression of ALS. So what about the late stage manifestation of ALS? In case of ALS, the late stage is manifested as dementia, memory loss, and respiratory failure, aspiration pneumonia, and oculomotor nerve of extraocular muscle is also affected in late stage. And sometimes it may resemble locked-in syndrome. This is the picture of Stephen Hawking, you know, the famous scientist who researched on black hole. So basically, you know, I am showing his picture because you know he suffered from ALS. So you can understand. So about the treatment, is there any treatment for ALS? Basically, there is no curative treatment. We cannot cure ALS, but we can do symptomatic treatment. So don't worry. And there is a drug that is approved by FDA for the treatment of ALS. And remember the name of the drug? It is Riluzole. Riluzole is very important because in NEET PG DNB questions we can get Riluzole is the drug of choice for So we can say ALS. So in ALS, we can use riluzole. There are different kinds of therapy which we can use, like the physical therapy, which involves different exercises, and we can also help the patient with the help of the physiotherapy. There is also speech therapy because the person cannot speak properly now, so the patient is asked to take speech therapy where it involves text to speech applications. This is the picture of a ALS patient leg. You can see how fasciculation and how actually leg weakness, paralysis, everything will occur. So from this picture you can guess. This is another picture which is showing vasculation and spasticity that has developed in the muscle. It has made the muscle stiff, and basically this muscle is actually weak and paralyzed, numb, so the person cannot get or feel. So you can understand how ALS results in paralysis of the muscles, basically the skeletal muscle, the muscles of limbs, the muscles of different parts of our body, those which are voluntary muscles. And for the treatment of ALS, we have only different options like physiotherapy, and we have speech therapy. Okay, this is the end of this video. So if you like our video, make a thumbs up and subscribe our channel for getting more medical videos like this. We have already crossed 675 plus subscribers in our YouTube channel, and we have crossed 700 plus Studygram followers in our Instagram. You can chat with me in my Instagram at the rate Medico Shahan, or you can also add me friend in Facebook. Shahan Like is my Facebook. I also have a page in my Facebook, Medico Shahan. You can follow that page also in Facebook. And do subscribe this channel, those who are new to my channel, and please share this channel with your friends so that many more medicos can get help from this channel. Bye bye.